Alright guys, we're going to look at factoring, more specifically the GCF, or the greatest common factor. The first thing we want to do is take each of the terms and expand it or find all of its prime factors. So I'm going to take 2a to the fourth and I'll be expanding it. I'll also be taking the 8a and expanding it. So 2 times a to the fourth power can be written as 2 times a times a times a times a. A times a times a times a is a to the fourth power. The 8, I'm going to find the prime factors of 8, and that would be 2 times 2 times 2, and that's because 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. I'm also going to need an a. At this point, now that I've expanded each of the terms, I'm going to find what they have in common. As you can see, they have a 2 in common, and they also have an a in common. Therefore, my greatest common factor can be found by multiplying these two things that I've circled, or the two common factors here. So 2 times a would be a 2a. This right here is called the GCF, the greatest common factor. This is the part that goes on the outside of the parentheses. Now we're going to find the part that goes inside the parentheses. And to find the part that goes inside the parentheses, we're going to look at all of our leftovers. As you can see from the first term, we had an a, and another a left over. So that a times that a times that a would be a to the third power. And then I'm looking at that second term. You'll notice that I had a 2 and another 2 left over. So if I multiply that 2 times 2, I end up with a positive 4. Therefore, these two things are called factors. These are my factors of 2a to the fourth plus 8a. Alright, example number 2, we've got 8ab squared minus 12a squared b cubed. And what we want to do is find the factors of this polynomial. So again, we're going to take each of the terms, the 8ab squared, and we'll also be taking that negative 12a squared b to the third and expanding each one of those. So again, 8, the prime factors of 8 are 2 times 2 times 2. I'm also going to need an a, and since I have a b squared, that would be b times b. So if I were to multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times a times b, I end up with an 8ab squared. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my negative 12a squared b cubed. Now notice this term is negative, so I'm going to start with a negative 1. And what I want are all the prime factors of 12. In that case, this would be 2 times 2 times 3. Because 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12. A squared would be a times a. B cubed would be b times b times b. Now, just like I did with the first example, I'm going to see what these have in common. Have a 2 in common. Another 2 in common. They also have a in common. And they also have a couple of b's in common. So all of this is what they have in common. Alright, so what we're going to do is multiply all of these terms or factors that I've circled. So if I multiply 2 times 2, that would give me a 4. I've also circled an a and 2 b's. And when I multiply b times b, that would give me a b squared. So again, this right here is called the GCF, the greatest common factor. And that's the part that goes on the outside of the parentheses. Now we're going to find the part that goes in the parentheses. And that's going to be all the leftovers. So you notice in the first term, all I had left over was a 2, so that'll go in the parentheses. In the next term, I had a negative 1, I had a 3, an a, and a b. So if I were to multiply all of those together, negative 1 times 3 would be a negative 3. I've also got an a, and I've also got a b. Therefore, these two terms are called factors. These are the factors of 8ab squared minus 12a squared b cubed. Okay, example number 3, 15f minus 20g squared. Just like the last two examples, we're going to start by taking each of the terms, and we're going to expand each of these terms. Find the prime factors. So 15. 15 would be 3 times 5. These are the prime factors of 15. However, there's also an f. So 3 times 5 times f would be 15f. Now I've got that negative 20g squared. And because it's a negative, I'm going to start with a negative 1. To get my 20, the prime factors of 20 would be 2 times 2 times 5. Because 2 times 2 would be 4. 4 times 5 would give me a 20. G squared would be g times g. So at this point I've expanded each of the terms. Now I'm going to circle what they have in common. And in this case, the only thing they have in common is a 5. Therefore, that 5 is what we're calling our GCF, our greatest common factor. And that's what's going to go on the outside of my parentheses. Now, to find what goes in the parentheses, we're going to take all the leftovers, this 3 and this f. If I multiply them together, I end up with a 3f. The next thing I'm looking at is that second term. I'm going to take all of these that were left over, multiply them together. So negative 1 times 2 is negative 2, and negative 2 times positive 2 is a negative 4, and g times g would give me a g squared. So again, these two things are called the factors. These are the factors of 15f minus 20g squared. Okay, example number 4, 10d to the 7th plus 2d to the 5th power. So just like all the others, 10d to the 7th, 2d to the 5th. We'll go ahead and expand each of those terms. 10, the prime factors of 10 are 2 times 5. D to the 7th, I'm going to need 7 d's. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 d's. 2d to the 5th power, I'm going to need a 2. And I'm going to need 5 d's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 d's. Now I'm going to circle what they have in common. You'll notice they have a 2 in common. They've also got a couple of d's. Another d here, another d here, another d here, and another d here. So this is what these two terms have in common. So at this point, if I multiply all of those that I've circled, 2 times d times d times d times d times d would give me a 2d to the 5th power. This again is called the GCF, the greatest common factor. That's what goes on the outside. Now I'm going to go put what goes on the inside. Notice what we have left over here is a 5, a d, and a d. And if I multiply 5 times d, I end up with a 5d squared. Now notice there is nothing left on the bottom. However, if I were to multiply by 1, I would end up with a 1. And it is important that I do have that 1, because 2d to the 5th power times that 1 would give me that 2d to the 5th power. So I do need the 1. Again, these are called the factors. Those are the factors of 10d to the 7th plus 2d to the 5th. Alright, we'll take a look at one more. We've got a big one here. We've got 4 terms. So we're going to take each of these 4 terms and just do the same thing that I've done with all the others. We're going to start by expanding each of these terms. We've got 8a squared c. And the last one is negative 16ab. So again, we're going to go ahead and expand or find the prime factors of each of these. So 12. 12 would be 2 times 2 times 3. We got a to the 4th power, so we're going to need 4 a's. 1, 2, 3, 4. B to the 3rd, we're going to need 3 b's. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. And c squared, we're going to need 2 c's. Alright, so 2 times 2 times 3 times a times a times a times a times b times b times b times c would give us that 12a to the 4th, b to the 3rd, c squared. And let's go ahead and do the same thing with these other terms. We got negative 1. 4 would be 2 times 2. We've got a to the third, so we're going to need 3 a's again. We've got a b. And we've got a c squared, 2 c's. The next one I have is an 8a squared c. So 8 would be 2 times 2 times 2. A squared would be 8 times a. And we also need a c. Negative 16ab, well, that's a negative, so we're going to start off with a negative 1. 16 would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Then I need 4 of those. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. And of course, we're also going to need an a and a b. So at this point, I've expanded each of the terms. Now we're going to see what all 4 share in common. So you'll notice that every single one of these has a 2. There's another 2 they share in common. Now we're going to see if they share any variables in common. As you can see, they do share one variable in common, and that's the a. So at this point, that's all they share in common. A 2, and an a. So if I were to multiply that 2 times 2 times a, that would give me a 4a. This is what we're calling our GCF, greatest common factor. That's what goes on the outside. Now we're going to put all the leftovers on the inside. For the first time, I had a 3, A, B, 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 C, and C. So if I were to multiply all that together, I end up with a 3A cubed, B cubed, and C squared. That's for the first term. The second term, I have a negative 1, an A, a B, a C, and a C. And if I multiply all that together, I end up with a negative 1, A squared, B, C squared. Alright, I'm looking at the next term. What I had left over was a 2, an A, and a C. So if I multiply that together, I end up with a 2AC. And finally, my last term, I had a negative 1, a 2, and a B left over. So if I multiply all of those together, I end up with a negative 4B. So these two are again what we call factors. These are the factors of that polynomial.